Hey everyone, welcome back to Commerce Rewired, where we spotlight the voices shaping the future of marketing, commerce, and consumer brands across emerging markets. I'm Hamid Al-Lawati, joined by my co-host Joe Sandaha.
I'm thrilled and welcome Nader Amiri. Nader's the founder of El Grocer and now a general partner at Homegrown Ventures. So, Nader, thank you for joining. Thanks for taking the time today. We're excited to have you on. You're guest number two, so helping us get this podcast going. Nader, we thought we'd start first. Yeah, thank you, man, and welcome. Nader, we thought we'd start first with your story, really right at the beginning, and we'd love to hear. We're both CPG guys. We've been in the CPG space a long time, and I know you as well. So maybe tell us a little bit about that, your CPG journey. What led you as well to El Grocer, and as you've gone through this kind of food journey and now at Homegrown Ventures, maybe touch on some of your biggest lessons in the MENA food delivery space as well, before it was hot and now that it is hot.
It's a hot region, so
Yeah.
so I started my career by chance getting into CPG. So as I was getting towards graduating, Unilever were recruiting like for internships and so from campus, and I was like, okay, this sounds cool. I obviously we know a lot of the brands of Unilever, and I was trying to figure out where to go in my kind of career and started with a internship with Unilever and fell in love with CPG. So ended up applying to a number of management trainee, entry level programs back then, and landed at Kraft Foods, or at least the Mondelez side of what was Kraft Foods. Ended up spending 7 years there, did a number of commercial roles, brand management, trade marketing, innovation, mostly in MENA, based out of Dubai, did a stint in Central Eastern Europe, and loved everything about it. But eventually thought it may be a time for a change and to have a different experience within CPG. So I had a colleague who had joined Coke in the Middle East and was kind of encouraging me to join, and ended up joining Coke and was managing brand Coke for 4 years in the Middle East. Very interesting market for Coke. You have countries, head to head countries, far ahead countries, far behind. So it
Yeah.
was an interesting challenge and an interesting, very different way of CPG than what I was used to at Kraft. Did that for 4 years, and I had an entrepreneurial bug and was just, okay, at one day I'm going to do something. And while I was at Coke, I started getting involved in startups. So a mentor advised me like, hey, why don't you try your hand at startups? I'm like, what is that? Or how do I get involved? And it was simply, hey, attend some of the events, attend some of the kind of hear some of the pitches, maybe do a bit of angel investing. Nothing like skin in the game to make it real.
Yeah.
So did a bit of that and loved it. I was like, okay, I see myself getting into this. I think it kind of removed a bit of the ambiguity of startup. And like, okay, I see myself doing that. And at the right time, I will do. And then eventually, towards the end of the Coke journey, it came up with the whole notion of why don't we have grocery delivery here? It was starting to pick up in other parts of the world, and ended up launching El Grocer with my co-founder Ryan. Very interesting journey. I think people thought we are mad in the early days, like who will order groceries in our part of the world? You just call the baqala or you'll send
Yeah.
somebody to get it for you. So it was like, and then did El Grocer for 5 years. We were the first to launch across the UAE. So it's like, really, Sharjah, Ajman, who's gonna order groceries there? Are
Yeah.
you guys okay? COVID hit, and we were the only platform during COVID delivering in all 7 Emirates. We were one of the few that stayed live. There were multi-million dollar large retailers who we will not name
Yeah.
who kind of crashed or couldn't cope or whatever it may be. But alhamdulillah, I mean, we went through a tough time, to be very honest as well. But it was kind of a thrilling experience to go through that. Did that for 5 years. Eventually, post COVID, we got acquired by Etisalat. Alhamdulillah, it was a good conclusion to the journey. Spent another 2 years after that transitioning the business. And beginning of last year, launched Homegrown Ventures, which we'll talk more about, but maybe I'll not blabber on and hear you out.
No, that's great. Look, I think one of these journeys, as well as you move from this kind of VC to or operator to kind of VC space. Maybe I'd love to know more. What made you shift? as someone who's been in that space a long time? What made you kind of interested in the VC space? And also, now that you're on this side, are there founder habits, that kind of still stick with you? You mentioned you mentor from your early days at El Grocer, these habits that stick with you, and what are they? What people in the same space today would love to hear a little bit about your learning on that path.
I always say, to other founders, what I can tell you is my mistakes, and
Yeah.
what are the
Yeah.
things I wouldn't do again.
Yeah.
I will always start with that, all the burned fingers and all the mistakes and all of that, and then it's up to everyone to make their own choice. But I always start with that. Did a lot of mistakes. I think that I wouldn't like to repeat myself, so that's usually what I start with as caution. And basically, it was an interesting shift because it wasn't planned. As we exited and transitioning the business and so on, it was more of, okay, I have enough time to think of what next, and it kind of just happened. So I started seeing more and more interesting first time founders in CPG, started speaking with them, and one thing leading to another. It was kind of a, should I, me and my partner Ahmed now, which I'll tell you a bit more about, like, should we launch our own brands because we come from the operator founder backgrounds, or should we do things a bit differently? And I think what tipped it over for us was like, we saw so much potential in founders that we thought were more qualified than us, and we were like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? You're doing something that I don't think I can do or I've done before, but maybe from my experience, Ahmed's experience, we can help get you some funding, we can help you structure it, we can help you do all of that. We're big believers of skin in the game, so it's not just about telling you what to do and or being with you while doing it, but it's more like, here is the money. And we started with that. It was our own money, me, Ahmed, and two other friends,
Yeah.
partners. And we're like, okay, yes, this is a big problem. So when we asked founders, it was more about our number one problem in CPG in MENA primarily is capital.
Yeah.
We'd go to,
And this is your own money into homegrown, right, Nader? Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
our own money. It was not homegrown ventures. It was
Right.
homegrown, Nader, Ahmed,
Yeah.
trying to see what we can do and if we can have an impact. We did two investments personally. We started working on, how would we structure this? Can we add value or not? And as that progressed, it turned like, okay, it seems that there are a lot more qualified founders, doing exciting things in our region, but have a gap that we can fill because we've had the experience of having raised capital, go through an exit journey, and we can believe using that small experience, do bigger things with capable and talented people out there.
Yeah.
And back them with capital and back them with, again, more of what not to do and bring the right people around to be able to create this movement with it. It was inspired by a lot of the things that I had gone through as a first time founder myself, where I remember how the community and how the ecosystem was in technology when I was doing Grocer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Okay, what do I wish I had as a first time founder? What is the kind of support I wish I had from investors, which I had from individual investors, that thankfully were part of my journey as angel investors that helped me get through the El Grocer journey. It's like, okay, how do you do this in a more structured and scalable way? That's kind of the thinking we went through.
okay.
Nader, we've known each other for a couple of years now, and I love what you're doing for the community, the CPG community in the Middle East, and we've been following your journey ever since. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the world of investing, and you also work with a lot of investors outside the Middle East, I'm assuming. What do a lot of these global investors get wrong about building in the Middle East market? There's a lot of playbooks that are derived from mature markets, but in many ways they don't replicate very well in emerging markets. How do you see the differences, and what do most of the investors get wrong in that space?
Oh, that's a great question. I think consumer habits in MENA have been changing at a far faster pace than before. I remember when I was a brand manager, back in the day, you'll plan something for the next 5 years. Now you need to be much more agile. You need to be much more, the cliche is localized, but it's not really localization. And you'll do lots of research, have the consumer understanding, and do all of that. So I think the speed has changed, and being really plugged in on the ground has changed. The other thing I would say is that the brands, the international brands built in MENA, if you look at and you guys were part of that, had been built by MENA talent. So we're trying to advocate now is, hey, why doesn't MENA talent build MENA brands rather than build emerging brands? Like, end of the day, all the big brands in the region, which are mostly the international brands, were built by MENA people. So why don't we build our own brands for MENA, but also for the world? So I think that shift or change that MENA as a market you will sell in, whether it's an export market or international market, using the people there, we're trying to shift the notion of, no, it should, why not the other way around? And why not MENA as a hub for regional brands as well as then global brands? I mean, international operators, international investors, I'll separate them. I think international operators see MENA as a market with, good macroeconomic conditions, still growing, blah, blah, blah. We know the story there. International investors have been, I think, getting to MENA, like in their list of priorities, right? So we haven't seen many international investors involved. What we know is that it is on the radar. It is something that we're starting to see a bit more activity and interest around when it comes to investment or acquisitions, I would say, right? So we've seen this happen globally in larger markets like India, Latin America, and so on, where large companies, whether it's large international companies or large regional companies, have been acquiring, again, I don't know what you would have, like local gems or and so on. And I think that tipping point is happening in MENA. So I believe there's going to be more activity at a faster pace coming here sooner than later.
I think that's an important point, because that is also what's going to fuel the next generation of founders in this space. Have you seen any large exits in this region? We hear a lot about exits in Canada and the US, and is mostly led by larger CPGs, legacy brand that cannot really disrupt the category themselves. So they step out of their bubble to acquire companies that have really made the difference. Are you seeing a lot of that, or has that started appearing in your space?
Absolutely. I think this was one of the things we were studying as well, as we were seeing that there have been exits. The pace of acquisitions has been increasing. Because if you take a step back saying, okay, you know what? The legacy brands, whether they're international or regional, they are reaching, if not have already reached, a certain level of maturity. How much more can you grow selling the product, the same product and brand, okay, with new flavors, with new packaging, or once in a blue moon hit? So you're reaching a certain level of maturity or stabilization, or call it whatever you may. So that means I need to get some inorganic growth. So we've been seeing that. I mean, there were some large exits in the maybe 10 years or so in the past, which were like El Kabir, which was Tasali by PepsiCo, and so on and so on. Fewer of those, right? The largest one being, Coca-Cola or Jan. These are international brands, actually, not as much as other parts of the world. And that has been increasing in the past years. I think COVID created a trigger of, to some extent, call it food security. That's part of the story. But to the other extent comes the whole movement of homegrown brands. And this is why we called it homegrown ventures, because MENA consumers, especially Gen Z, Gen Alpha, are becoming much more conscious about where and how they spend their money for many different reasons. So that's been changing, which means these brands are growing, and the shift is happening from a consumer deciding, I make choices with my money and this is what I'm choosing, for many different reasons. Then you come to the second part, where we saw a bit of a gap, is that there is a bridge missing. So there are a lot of companies, large international regional companies, who are interested to expand their portfolios, whether it's building category depth or whether it's category width. A lot of the brands today in our region, and this is what reminded me of my early days as a founder in consumer tech, at least, is that a lot of the CPG brands in the region are at the early stage. So you have a whole bunch of players looking to expand their portfolios and acquire, but most of the market is in the early stage, maybe a little bit in the mid stage. So those need to mature to a level where we do that, but the capital that is willing to take a risk, it's a risk. The capital that is willing to take a risk is limited. And this is where we said we will come in, not just with capital, but also with support. Because unlike tech, this is an industry that requires a bit more heavy holding. The unit economics, the journey is different. So that bridge is where we saw that, there's a gap that we can come and play a role in nurturing the ecosystem, I would say, more than anything else.
It's definitely an exciting time to be in this space, especially in the region. What are your focus areas as homegrown ventures right now?
So we've looked at a number of categories based on, one of the luxuries, I say, or advantages of being a laggard is looking at globally what has worked and not worked. And then saying, hey, does this make sense for me or not? I'll give you an example of a recent investment we've made and we've announced, which is in the pet food space, right? So we said, okay, historically, this region hasn't been big on pet. In some pet categories for religious reasons or assumed religious reasons in some cases, and in other cases just because of demographics, because of many different. But what we've seen, I think COVID in many things was kind of a trigger, right? Or a spark or whatever it may be. I always use the example that in many categories, it acted like a break in the consumer or shopper's autopilots. One of them being pets. And I myself was a first-time pet owner during COVID.
Yeah.
Or the better term, pet parents, right? So stuck at home, need some company. We got a cat. Now I have 5. Habits change, right? It became a trigger, it became a disruption, an interruption point. And the market of pets started shifting in a dramatic way. Pet ownership, allowing pets in buildings and communities changed. And this is where we saw that there is a big gap in offering certain segments and types of pet products in the region compared to the number of options that are available globally. So when we analyzed, a number of categories, we saw, okay, pet food is a category where there is a pun intended tailwinds.
Yeah.
All right. And lack of investment going into this space, lack of options and brands, and lack of interesting innovation. So when we looked at the market, spoke to a number of people, validated it with channel partners, with advisors, with consumers, I was like, okay, you know what? It makes sense to take a bet on the category, but also, of course, like any other investment, the right people and the right product within the category. So these are some of the things we're always analyzing, like what are certain, the old way of saying it is category. I think the newer way of saying it is more of consumer needs, because category lines are blurring. But what are the consumer problems or needs solve? And then is there a category filter around it or not? And then you go and tackle that. So we've shortlisted some categories. I'll not reveal all of them. We've done a lot of work and we continue evolving it because, like I said, a few minutes ago, consumer trends are changing at a much faster pace. And you need to be careful which trends are fads and which trends are here to stay. So you need to kind of spend good time to invest in things that you believe are structural rather than fads, and then making the right choices.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you mentioned categories, and I wanna dive a little bit deeper and get more out of you on this. What would you say is one category that you think is ripe for disruption?
So other than the ones we've done,
Other than the ones you've already mentioned.
See, I think in our region, I will not necessarily box it to a category, and I will give some category examples, but I would say with a young population, digitally connected, right? Looking for health and wellness. Again, those are general. Convenience and time is becoming an issue, right? So I need food solutions, right? Especially if I focus a bit more on food in this case. I need food solutions that are more suited to my lifestyle today. Food or beverage solutions that are more suited to lifestyle today. I need healthy meals, whether it's frozen, fresh, whatever it may be, that are easier to eat, consume, or I'm preparing food. How do I add healthy ingredients together, to make the food still be healthy but flavorful, indulgent, whatever core deliverables are there. Uh, are there snacks, right, that are healthy but fit today's fast-paced lifestyle better? So we're looking at that kind of convenience as a need a problem because your time is a lot more constrained, but you still want to deliver on taste and functionality, be it health and wellness or so on. So I would put that as an anchor and say, okay, you look at within snacks, what are the subcategories in snacks that help solve that problem? And you would look at cooking and you say, okay, what are certain cooking categories that you can disrupt by adding flavor, functionality as well, because no one is doing that, or even whether it's frozen or chilled kind of meals, of course, with the operational challenges behind them, but that's what would have helped with it. We put a general health and wellness, but I would say it's convenience first, health and wellness next, what
Yeah.
founders seem to be looking for. And Gen Alpha being so habituated, I would say, to social and instant gratification, and looking at quick commerce's rise within that. So I want instant gratification, not just with digital, but how can I get instant gratification that
Yeah.
fits my lifestyle and choices faster today?
Mo, go. Finish your thought, Mo.
No,
Go.
I was just thinking, because we spoke a lot about category, and when it comes to investments, there are two things you look at. You look at, is the category an attractive investment opportunity? The second thing is this the right founder to win the business?
Absolutely.
Is there a specific founder profile that you guys typically look for?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it a profile because people are different, but I would say ambition is one, right? Ambition doesn't mean being ambitious or lack of ambition. It's more about what do you want to build as a founder. For us, we always encourage founders to be clearer in what they want. That's what I would say, right? So, do you want to build a large business and scale fast? Or do you want to scale at your own pace? Or do you want to have this as a lifestyle business? CPG gives you that luxury. As opposed to tech, you probably don't have a choice. But in CPG, you can have a small to medium brand and without having to raise capital and building it out gradually. In CPG, we see in our region and others, maybe more so in our region, a lot of CPG family businesses that have been built over generations and will be passed over generations. And in CPG, because before there was no venture, but now there is venture, right? So you can build something faster. That means you need to be willing to do it. You need to be ready to do it. That means, a whole bunch of things in your mindset that if you need to be ready that, hey, a new investor means it's a partner more than an investor.
Yeah.
And that's where we encourage the founder, say, hey, learn about who you're taking investment from to see if there is a fit. I would say that maybe better than ambition, consciousness and awareness, right? Knowing what you are striving for so that we know right? And eventually it may or may not be a fit, what we're trying to do, but we want to see homegrown brands flourish. So we always even take an extra mile to share feedback, thoughts, advice, and ask the bosses to understand. And having been a founder myself, sometimes you need to go through the thinking process. You know what? I didn't think of it that way. Let me see if this is a fit or not. And if it is, what does this mean? This means you're going to have a partner. This means you need to be a bit more flexible or adaptable. This means respecting each other's point of view and knowing what are the different roles and responsibilities. Maybe you're not looking for a investor partner. You're looking for a co-founder, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Mm.
also valid, I think.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
through the thinking process.
Yeah.
And in some cases, the thinking process is already there. So it's like, okay, where can we go? How fast can we go? How much money will it take? Is it possible? And in some cases, it's about refining that thinking process, especially going back to what I was saying in our region, like I was, and I had to go through a journey, a lot of first-time founders. It's about clarifying the thinking process and is it a fit or not? We're all human and we all have different phases in our lives and different needs in those different phases. For us, we spend that extra time saying, is that a fit or not before anything else?
Totally makes sense. So we've seen the typical journey that CPG founders take in North America is if you're a CPG founder, your starting point is your home kitchen.
Yeah.
You build something in your home kitchen, your friends, your network around you like this product. You then go into D2C. D2C becomes your testing ground. And then you start, there's a big gap between D2C to retail. And that takes a lot of effort, a large investment in many cases. You start going with smaller health food stores, niche placements. Whole Foods is supposed to be a big entry point for a lot of these CPG founders. What is the typical playbook or journey that Middle East founders take?
It's very similar, but it's evolving. I'll tell you, and they're taking the regional differences. So, starting in your kitchen or a kitchen is if your food or beverage is probably or even in some cases, in home care or personal care is usually the first approach from a what you will produce kind of view. D2C for sure, right? So even if it's a smaller percentage, it is the first thing you would start with. Then comes e-commerce. Add on top of it the trends that have been changing in quick commerce. So in our region, as opposed to North America, quick commerce is a big thing. So that's a similarity with India that's different from North America or Europe.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy. I mean, quick commerce has been brewing over the past few years, and they've become rightfully so more selective because there's limited space. It's difficult. They want to give a differentiation, but there's a limited approach how you can do that. So D2C e-commerce is your starting point, and it's a great starting point because you have control. You can learn fast, succeed fast, or fail fast, and adapt. Then you would go fast to quick commerce. Once you'll have some data, you're more confident, you'll find the right way, you'll convince the right people. Quick commerce, and again, data is out there, some up and some down. But if you look at market like UAE, between e-commerce and quick commerce, as a category as a whole, is around 20%, maybe a bit more. In some categories, it may be 30, 40%. Even if you take a smaller category, it is sizable enough for a small brand to build a base. Then, once you are ready, manufacturing-wise, distribution-wise, marketing-wise, financially, then you go to retail. If you go to retail too soon, you're going to burn yourself. You get the order, you may get the first order, second order, then what?
Yeah.
Saudi, very similar. Saudi, around again 15% or so, but growing very fast. As in GCC as a whole, e-commerce, quick commerce, from all the channels, is the fastest growing segment or channel. And this is where sometimes we see a kind of a dichotomy where GCC, MENA was a big middle kind of level market. And actually there's two trends pulling from the middle. One is the whole discounters and value, and one is the whole premium value, better for you. So it's you as a brand. If you don't want to do, you don't necessarily need to do premium. You can, if you can and you want to, fantastic. But we're seeing some brands come directly into the value play, with or without health and wellness, based on how you're trying to tackle the market. So that shift is happening, and that's one approach. And then based on your category, you need to experiment before retail, probably with a differentiated channel. So if your food and beverage is tapping into a few cafes, restaurants, whatever it may be, a learning. If your beauty and personal care, what are the online or offline channels you can tap into? So there's a lot of validation and formulation on the business before you say, okay, now I want to raise this much. Now I want to go this far. Do I have what it takes to do it?
Right.
So
Interesting.
go ahead, Joe.
No, look, I wanted to, Mo, if we want to stay in this in food space, I'm interested. Look, I just came back from I want to take a shift, Nader, and just see. I know we're talking CPG, but the tech and AI disruption. I mean, we can't have a podcast without asking you that, right? So I've just come back from Web Summit in Doha. I spent 3 days. It was great. but a lot of buzz, a lot of hype, lots of AI talk, lots of Gen AI talk, lots of agentic talk, right? And I'm curious, now that you're sitting on this side, on the homegrown side, outside of the buzz, and how do you guys and your, I guess your partner founders or the guys in the VC, how do you move the buzz and the hype and look for, you know, that AI? And I'm not talking automation and workflow and all that is fine, but how do you look for that AI that's really going to drive utility, that's really going to be adopted? Is that something that you advise founders on who are in the CPG space, but also caught up with the hype? Just love your take on that in general, both from a, you know, to the founder, but also maybe what you're seeing out there in our region, in MENA especially.
No, absolutely. I think AI, and this is what we encourage to our portfolio company founders, and we apply and we find and try to share some of the, so AI as an enabler in your business. So I applied this to some extent thanks to my co-founder, right? It's like, how can we use AI to be leaner and to be quicker, right? It's very different when it's in a large organization, you're trying to do transformation and do all of that. So companies are a bit better, some are a bit slower in the adoption, but it's a shift in the way you've been doing it. And to kind of steer this giant ship takes a lot of time. In early stage brands, you're doing it ground up. So,
Yeah.
you know, the mother of necessity.
Yeah.
The need is the mother of necessity, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is that you don't have a choice. You don't have an agency and a creative team, and you have to find solutions. It used to be harder where you have to do it yourself. Now you have tools to do that. I mean, we've been lucky to find and recommend the right partners who help with AI throughout the value chain. So we look at it throughout the value chain, and we're on the lookout for more such solutions, saying, how can you use AI with a CFO as a service, right? There are certain things that are easier, certain things that are harder. And we're in the process of mapping that and saying, hey, in content and brainstorming and ideation, that can be a leverage. You know, financial analysis or data analysis, this can be a leverage. So rather than go through a very long journey and having to spend so much money, now you can do it in a much shorter time in a more agile way. So we're always encouraging and recommending and trying to find and recommend the right tools for our portfolio companies to leverage, because in the future, again, from an investment point of view, it's more bang for your buck and it's a quicker path. So do I really need to build a 50-person team, or can I do it with 20? It's going to cost me less, and will it really take me a 3-year journey to do, or can I...
Yeah. Interesting. Look, we have a section. Mo, I think you had one more that was on.
No, I think we can go to the next
Yeah.
section.
We end a lot of these, and we want to with a rapid fire type thing, Nader. So these are just what quickly comes to mind. Okay, so there's about 4 of them that I really want to ask. But first one is, what's a local brand or business that you think and you've seen from a homegrown side that's doing really cool?
Biased, so I'll say all our portfolio companies.
Okay. Next one then. Book, podcast, or thinker that has shaped how you build, how you've built kind of in your journey, but also now. Yeah.
I would say on the thinker part, there are 2. I think more and more recently that I've been taking inspiration from. One is Naval Ravikant, so with a lot of kind of nuggets of insights and how to take things, from a structural approach. The other is Nassim Taleb, especially with the latest book that I've read, which is 2 years ago, let's say, Anti-Fragile, and even becoming more relevant in our world today, where it's not just about weathering surprises and storms that come, COVID, the Red Sea, this, that, and having to adapt to it. It's no, how can you actually use these trends to your advantage compared to your competitors and compared to the market? So, and of course, drawing a lot more inspiration from Nassim on many things. Those are the 2.
Okay. Next one. 2 more. Next one. If you had 4 or 5 minutes with first-time founder in the region, what would you tell them?
I wouldn't tell them. I would ask them. I would always like to listen and hear out, why are they doing what they're doing? Where do they want to go with this? What are they looking for? I'd like to first learn these things before saying, what not to do or what how to think about it.
Okay. And then one last one. Look, I loved a lot. This has been great. But one thing that I really loved about today, what you said, is this whole meta brands and meta people building, meta brands. I really love that. What's one thing global brands, if we shift that for a second, what's one thing global brands could learn from local challengers or local creators or local innovators?
I think being more in tune with the consumer beyond just reports.
Okay.
I like reports. I read a lot of them. I share a lot of them.
Yeah.
Makes it easier to kind of spread knowledge. But I think reports are an after effect. First it happens, then it's reported. So it's how can you be part of that rather than report on that?
Okay. Great. Also gave us some tips on how we can be more rapid fire in these, but it's great. That helped, Nader. Look, thank you. That was great. I'm always excited about having you on, and now I see why. So we really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, Nader, thanks. This has been a great conversation, and we will keep an eye on how Homegrown does and supports the community.
Inshallah, inshallah. We're rooting for all brands, and we always say we're here to kind of help the homegrown ecosystem, and especially particularly on CPG, for many reasons. We can only actively be involved with a few, but we'd like to see many succeed because we believe there is room for many to succeed.
Absolutely.